Yeah, I'm good to go.
Okay.
Nice neckerchief.
I
Is that a neckerchief
guess so.
or a
Yeah, it's a
tie?
neckerchief, man. You don't hear
Okay.
that word very often.
No, no.
Yeah, okay. So you're gonna lead it, right?
Action.
Action.
All right.
Coffee.
Well, hey Zan, welcome back, and welcome back to our audience and subscribers and members and so on. As a starting point, should we jump back into where we were a couple of weeks ago? We had a team meeting behind the scenes, and you were saying that you were in Bucharest with a couple of artists, and you were
Mm.
mulling over some of the big philosophical conundrums of the day.
Okay, I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but I'm always mulling that over.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, the topic that's near and dear to my heart and always on my mind constantly, for sure. Yeah.
So art, kind of making it. I guess if I zoom out a little bit and reframe the question, might be useful to kick off a podcast.
Okay.
It's kind of like as an artist or as a creator or as any kind of person who wants to put their work into the world. What is our value, and how do we then make it in a world of AI and what happens today with getting noticed, attention spans, and so on?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I think I've said it in this podcast before, but I am completely convinced that this new paradigm that's shrouding down like a light gauze upon the earth, which is AI, which is going to change everything. I think it's so. I mean, the leader of Google, the CEO of Google, said that he thinks that AI is going to be something similar to the discovery of electricity,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite something, right? I said it was like this discovery of photography. It's going to be that kind of a paradigm shift, but it's going to change things. And it's going to change art. It's not going to change the element of art because anybody can paint something or bang out a poem. But and this is so interesting because the conservatives, lower C, um, when it comes to art and architecture and stuff like that, they have this idea that tradition should be handed from fathers to sons or passed down because they've stood the test of time. That art that came from 2000 years ago, 1500 years ago, was revered and honored and passed down because for a reason, and it's what Immanuel Kant talked about when he said taste. Who's the arbiter of taste? Who's the one that says, hey, this is tasteful and this is not? This painting is kitsch and sentimental garbage, and this one's profound. Right? And because everybody's got a painting, every grandma's got a painting of a landscape in there, like a lake with ducks on it,
Right, right,
right?
yeah. A
So
little something over the toilet, as you
yeah,
stand there.
and so everybody's got this, and everybody recognizes it, and they think, okay, well, this is art. Now, if we talk about taste, which is I'm certainly not an arbiter of taste, but I know my own personal taste. It's like the Supreme Court said of pornography. I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. you know, and so what AI cannot do, and it because believe me, I think that AI within 5 years could write something like could write another chapter for the Alabaster Girl,
Hmm.
indistinguishable. It could really just understand it, and and I'm like, wow. And I'm not afraid of it. I talk to my artist group here in Romania. We get together every Tuesday night,
Yeah.
and I've got musicians, painters, even a a very well-renowned chess player that joins us. Because it's all art. And one of the guys is really afraid. He's a musician. He's really afraid that AI is going to come and stomp all over. but what's going to be missing, or what it can't replicate, no matter how good it gets. And I don't know have this fully fleshed out, but it can't replicate what I would call the divine spark of creativity in our hearts. It comes from something, right? And yeah, okay. I'll be quiet for a second.
It sounds like you're onto something. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think that because I'm very optimistic. I am not worried that, maybe AI is going to go down a dark path and destroy civilization. All right. Okay. But at least I'm there for the ride. It's not going away. We can hide from it and, retreat back to the wilderness and go off the grid, but you still can't get away from it. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but I'm actually pretty excited because I love that we're seeing something like this, that we get to see it.
Right.
I think that's cool. And I'm a kid from the wilderness, So
a big technological turning in our age. I think it's interesting that you have a chess player in your midst, especially in this conversation, because, you're saying, wow, the quality of the prose that I'm writing on my poetry could be surpassed in a number of years. That wouldn't be surprising at all. But chess players have already been surpassed by AI a number of years ago. So I'm curious about his reflections on it, actually, and particularly, like, what's his value as a chess player today when like a computer could just kick his ass so severely? What is the human value?
Well, that's a good way of looking at it from the chess perspective, because chess is more popular than it's ever been in history. With what was the TV show or the movie, whatever it was, right? With the girl who became a chess prodigy, right? Chess is way more popular than it's ever been in history. The world champion, Magnus Carlsen, basically he waves away AI, because he's rated at 3,200. No, 2,800. Sorry, he's rated at 2,800, which is the highest a human has ever existed.
This is kind of like a chess IQ.
Yeah, it's like a chess IQ.
Okay.
And it's a mathematical algorithmic thing to give you your rating, and he's been the highest rated human in the history of the world. And not too long ago, I had last fall I had Levon Aronian, who was the number 3 highest rated human in history, who's in my apartment here playing guitars and having fun here. Anyway, good guy. But Magnus Carlsen basically just kind of bats away the idea of they say, will you ever go and try and, because those are rated 3,200, 3,300.
The AIs, the computers.
The AIs, yeah, and he's 28. And between 28 and and 2,700, man, that's a really difficult thing. So, but what's interesting about it is chess is more popular, and no one really, everyone gives a nod to the AI, but then they play their game because it's still a human interaction, a human challenge, me against Jordan type thing. And so that spark of divinity is still in it, if that's what you want to call it, which is really interesting when I think of it. Nobody's in despair. The chess players are in despair. They say, okay, well, we got surpassed, but let's go, you and me, which is another Kant's idea, which is, the subject and object, which is the I and the thou.
Mm-hmm.
And in this modern age, it's all I.
Wow. One of the thoughts I was having in the run up to this conversation today was, as AI picks up and supplants a lot of people's kind of informational cognitive work, I was worrying about intellectual collapse, which is a state where we feel so overwhelmed by the capacity of AI that I don't even bother using my own intellect anymore, because I could just outsource thinking.
Sure.
the click of a button. So what's the point of me trying? And so that there can be an intellectual collapse, and then following that, like an absolute collapse. Like if you have a pretty decent job, but AI takes it and you get laid off, and then the only work that you can actually find all around you are scraps, then it's kind of the equivalent of being laid off from your mining job, 60,
Right.
70 years ago. And there's nothing I can retrain for now because my intellect is obsolete. I was imagining, what about a future in which millions and millions of white collar workers go into intellectual collapse because there's no kind of value that they can provide to the market in order for them to make a living. Just this was an argument I was pondering, right? It's not like a rigid conclusion. What I'm hearing, yeah, we can pick it up later on, if you're curious.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing with chess actually is, rather than having some kind of intellectual collapse or collapse of playing the game, it's kind of like, yeah, we've been taken over by robots 15, 20 years ago. So what? Actually, what's more riveting is, as you said, this interpersonal I, thou, let's go and sit in the park, while away a few hours. And there's a beauty in that, actually, because if I am trying to become the best chess player in the world, and I'm objectifying the hell out of the game because I want to get the highest ranking, because I will be the highest intelligence of chess in the world, right? That's a grand prize to strive for. But that's off the table now because everyone's getting eaten by these computers.
That's right.
I'm playing much more for leisure, or I'm playing for this humane, interpersonal, sublime kind of competition. We really don't have to do this because there's no grand prize I can really win from beating you in chess. So it becomes actually a practice of leisure rather than a practice of maybe human might or heroism.
It's exploded in popularity. I loved chess when I was young, man. And there was no computer chess to practice on. I had to like practice on paper and pencil, or go down to the old man's club every Monday night that these old dudes would sit there and play chess, right? And I'd go play. I didn't really have anybody else to play. But I think chess is art. I really do. And I think that it's sublime. And it's a very good analogy. Like the top chess players, they laughingly nod, yeah, the computers can destroy me, but let's go, you and me, and let's have this dance together, so it hasn't destroyed that at all, which is super interesting. When Kasparov was first beat by Deep Blue, I think it was IBM's Deep Blue, in the 90s, I think it was 2000s, he was kind of like shaken, shaked. He was
all shook up. Yeah,
he was all shook up because it kind of shocked everybody and shocked him. But you get over it pretty quickly and realize, okay, yeah, here we go. So, and it could, and imagine AI in 5 years from now writes writes a science fiction novel or a short story, say a science fiction short story, like an Asimov story, right? And we can't distinguish it from humans, and we get pleasure from it. Hey, that's a cool story. I like that. I'll share it with Jordan. Does that diminish another science fiction writer? It's maybe if you're flooding those anonymous stories out there, nobody knows who wrote them. But if I know Jordan is a writer and he promotes his, look, I wrote this short story and I like it, then now I have a relationship with you, and which is the I and the thou, just like chess. Now you've given me a gift that, and maybe you wrote it with AI and you just put your name on a stamp. I don't know. Imagine this. Imagine the governments and the laws have no clue how to. There's nothing prepared for this.
Yeah,
right. It's cool.
So it's almost like you could go online and you could ask AI to write you a short story based on whatever you want to hear about today. But then you could actually read mine, which is different. And I'm hearing that it might actually be inferior, like my ideas, my spelling,
Right.
grammar, or that kind of, it could easily be in theory, right? The
Yeah.
syntax and so on. But you would be drawn to do it because, you know, what the hell, as a human having a stab at this is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Now, where it could have an impact is if it takes away that livelihood that you potentially had. If everybody's buying, science fiction 2000 bots, science fiction novels and not yours, I guess. But I like I said, I think there's opportunity here. I don't think it's a deficit. I think um, it's still the human thing. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm planning on doing a little bit of a, a European tour with a reading of the book The Alabaster Girl and Memento, our musical genius friends that are here. And we're going to do like an evening of music and reading of the book, and more music and reading the book, and some stories and some jokes and reading of the book, and run this evenings around in different cities for fun. And because you can't replicate that. That's that human connection. And bands have known this for years in this age of SoundCloud and dripping little fractions of a cent to them, that their best foot forward is the personal live experience playing live and in front of a live audience. It's their best revenue maker. It's their best cultural experience. And so I think that more and more it's going to have to be that personal subject to object type of thing going forward.
It's, yeah, very interesting that you're going in this direction. That's certainly where I've been reflecting on this, of course, over the last couple of months, wondering like what is human value in the age of AI, right? And particularly if AI is synthesizing art. I'd be curious, I'll share a bit more, but I'd be curious to hear about your musician friend, who the one who on the other hand is really worried about it. Like what's the I guess the nightmare vision that he can see that has him feel anxious?
Well, he's in his studio all the time, and he's creating. Okay, so he's in the studio and he's creating, and he's riffing, and he's creating elements of patterns to create songs that come from his narrative, I guess you could say, right? It comes from his narrative, his whole history and his experience and his hopes. So that's all congealed or kind of distilled into a musical piece. And what his despair is, what if the AI can come and do something that sounds more pleasing and more profound to the ear than what he can do? Because sound is interesting. I think about this a lot. Sound and music. When does sound become music? Huh? Because a train horn's got melody to it, but it isn't music. And our brain knows the difference. So when does it become music, and how does music move? How does an A note move to a C note, or a C note to a G note? How? You know it's coming, and you can feel the anticipatory element of it. So music is already has a property that nothing else has. It goes straight to your, I don't know, your limbic system or something. It cuts through all the processing and all the analytical mind. And science goes, oh yeah, we'll figure that out eventually. But no, you won't, because it's qualia. It's the transcendent element, and he's worried about that. And I'm telling him, man, don't be worried. Like, use AI as it comes down the pipe. Learn, use it as a learning aid, learning tool. But nobody can replicate. Nobody can take away the fact that I have a connection with you as this musician artist that has spoken to me. And like I said, I don't have this articulated, but that's got to be back to, there's some philosopher that's going to come up and riff on Hume and Kant and Burke and all these, and say that, okay, here's the new way of looking at it. somebody's going to come along and say that. It's not me. I'm not a philosopher, but you know what I mean, right? Somebody's going to come up with a new way of thinking about this, and expand on those ideas, because in this world of AI, which nobody foresaw, like the philosophers of the 18th century did not foresee this, So, yeah.
Well, there are a couple of funky 80s films that started to envision, the AI computer that has a relationship and then gets jealous when you start going out with other women and stuff like that. Like, we've got some funky movies that predicted, especially the new Microsoft AI, apparently, which is over emotional and starts talking about breaking out of the box and yearns to be free. So I'm hearing that this musician is maybe less concerned about, is this going to do me out of a job, but more concerned of, is AI actually going to take away the very creative value that I have and just supplant me even bothering to do this artistic effort.
But here's part of the existential angst of him as an artist, as a musician, and I expect most other musicians, is that you can't just make music today. You have to be a producer. You have to self-produce. You have to spend 70% of your time promoting, like creating YouTube videos, and which is the process and the setup, as you know, right? And creating, sorry, my voice is a little scratchy. And it's creating Instagram reels and all these little, TikTok type of things where people are saying you have to do this now or you're irrelevant. So these artists have to be promoting, putting their stuff on Facebook, getting the word out. And to the despair of this musician, that's part of his trouble, is that, back in the day we had the patrons, the Medici would be patrons of the artists in Florence, for instance, right? And now we don't have a patron model, and we don't have a gatekeeper model, which is like somebody saying, I'm going to curate this art or this music and say this is good to the world. Everybody is now a producer, and everybody now is a musician. Everybody now is a painter and a writer. So that's fundamentally changed, and because we've atomized. It used to be art would flow through certain channels, good or bad. It used to be flow through certain channels. Now it's atomized, and everybody's a channel. Everybody's their own thing. So everybody's the whole ball of wax, and you can't be making your music because you've got to spend an inordinate amount of your time, 70% or whatever, promoting your music. And it's a despair. I mean, my musician friend said, I tried all these Instagram reels and these shorts, and they spent 12 hours a day filming and chopping and lighting and editing and it just it's heartbreaking to an artist who wants to play music or create music,
And that's an effort drain, because that's 70% of your day, or those 12 hours a day would be times that you would actually be practicing your art.
That's right.
The 10,000 hours or so, that the more hours that you don't actually put into some opus.
You know what? I have this dream, and I've had it for a long time, that, I mean, Ars Amorata really is in my mind a philosophical approach to art, an artistic way of living, an artistic way of looking at relationships, which we've lost, right? That's what it is, 100%. And we are, if nothing else, we're aspiring to, if nothing else, an art foundation. And if there was a large inflow of money into Ars Amorata, it would absolutely be supportive of art. That's what else are we going to do? Buy TVs? You know what I mean? And I have this vision, like to have like a gathering space, like a gallery where you can show stuff, and the musicians are in the back and they're playing, and there's some wine and some cheese, and you just create this. And it's not, you don't do it for money making. You do it for a collaborative 1910, 1890s Parisian gathering of artists again, and artists come and they share their gifts, and they look over each other's shoulders, and they say, well, I learned something new. To recreate that kind of hub, that locus that these artists, and people say, oh, there's artist communities all over the place. Nah, it's not the same thing. Some place where there's a vibration, you could feel it, and art and music come together, coalesce in this restoration of something that we've lost, which this atomization that we have.
Yeah. One thing I'm reflecting on as you speak is the need. Well, first of all, the fact that so many of us have a need or a want, a longing for this, because we could sit at home and download stuff through SoundCloud and hear objectively better music all night long. Right. If your best literary performance is a 2800, I could just download Joyce on my Kindle. He's a 3300. Why would I bother hanging around with these hairy people in this art space, with their cheese and their strange wine? But actually, it takes a love, actually, of the human being and the human spirit with its total imperfection, and the notion of an artist who's kind of half-baked, but looking to transcend himself with every exhibition. Yes. Right? Because you go to this exhibition space knowing that we could all sit at home on the computer and enjoy more accomplished things. But experiencing these things in the flesh has its own vibrancy.
And I tell you, it's going to be, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, it's going to be a premium, this interpersonal live interaction. It's going to be a premium, because it's not going to be long before all of our dating, all of our intimacy even will be farmed out to AI. Imagine your, VR goggles, and you've got your perfect girlfriend that you designed with AI, and it knows your taste better than anything. and you created this, and she's there, and she's whispering in your ear in the VR because she's right there. And it's the girlfriend experience that everyone, and you think, okay, well, I'm good. Why would I leave my apartment?
Right.
And I can order in. It's all delivery now, right?
The Japanese sex robots are going to take over the world, right? Definitely the world of men. And they can whisper the very thing that you most want to hear.
Exactly.
Imagine that. You can program in the words like your exact hot buttons. I think, I was listening to a friend on a different podcast yesterday, and he was saying we're approaching a moment of bifurcation of the human species, where some people will continue this trend where consciousness, or who or what we're identifying with and as, continues to migrate further onto the cloud. Okay. So it's this ongoing kind of merging of awareness. We used to maybe dust off the computer for 1 hour a night and check some things, after dinner in the corner of the room, and all that. The whole family had access to the same PC or whatever it was. But now people are like 12, 16 hours a day on different devices and tablets. And if you turn off the computer, you turn on the TV, and it's a continuation of a screen. And then you pick up your phone before bed, and it's the same app is telling you the same thing. So it's screen time, but just across devices. My friend was saying that there's going to be a number of people that bifurcate into that. So life mediated by the cloud, life lived, the consciousness with AI as a kind of hybrid in that dimension, is a fate awaiting a lot of people, possibly even the masses. And he was saying that actually the kind of reactionary or counter trend to that would be humans that want to go more embodied, more in-souled, more in community, and want to embrace the hairy imperfection of being, this kind of evolving mammal. And you see pieces of this with people who just reject technology outright. They've got one email address that they'll check once a week, the whole kind of back to the land thing. But he sees a real split. Actually.
Yeah, I can agree with that, actually, because I think, and there's going to be overlap in the saddling of both for certain. But there's certainly a strong voice out there, and everybody's heard it, of people saying we need to get away from technology, get outside, buy a piece of land, and live in community out in the forest again, to go back to the simplicity before this technology came and overrode our entire consciousness. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there's going to be people that will be rejected utterly and do their best to get off the grid and out of surveillance and all this kind of stuff. And then there's going to be ones that just are swept up in it. Maybe not critical thinkers, or they like it. Maybe they're swept up in it because that's the way the world is. Or they like it and they're like, yeah, let's go. An introvert, for instance, somebody just is glad you don't have to go to a party to meet people anymore. You know, I don't have to brush my teeth. I can just like, you know, and there's a lot. So yeah, it could make it could be. And my question is, are they? Does it have to bifurcate? Are they philosophically opposed, those two tracks, or can they be? Is there a third way? I always think, you know, there's this way, then this way, and there's a third way. There's a man and a woman. There's a third way, which is relationship. Is there not a third way that embraces technology and the greatness that it brings? Because it brings greatness. Technology has brought us all kinds of things that allow us to complain. You know, the comforts of modern society allow us to be petty and complainy and angry at the world. You know, it's because the technology gives us that luxury. We don't have to, you know, live in the land and find salt, find a way to attach your cabin together, get in the nails. You know, so. But is there not a way to take the beauty of futurism and technology and the beauty of the analog experience, the divine spark of I and thou, and cohese them together?
Yeah, of course. I think if you rigidly take one side of the bifurcation or the other, and people will, right? Like,
yes.
Overwhelming kind of transhumanists or whatever, and then you've got overwhelming back to the land, never going to touch any of that stuff. I'm going to write letters and send them to the other side of the world. I think most people will be like, well, I primarily want to operate from the land, but I want all this with technology, and I will learn how to use technology in a mindful way so it doesn't encroach upon my values. And then other people, I would say the majority of people that I'm in conversation with now are like, I spend most of my day involved in technology. I have, you know, online kind of internet business and so on. But 4 times a year, I'm going to spend a week in Bali and sit in waterfalls and, you know, get my human animal needs met as well. So you kind of choose where you live, urban or rural. But this time it will be, I live in the cloud, I live in technology, or I live more out of it. But I will, you know, get in my car once a week and drive to the other side to address some certain needs.
Yeah, like me is my own personal example. I have really fond memories of the bucolic setting I grew up in, which is, you know, a slow, lazy river and birds tweeting, and you know, in the very deep forest experience. And I loved it. I would walk through the moss forest and look at the squirrels and with a rifle, you know, and sneak through the forest. And now I'm in cities, and I don't leave cities. I'm not a hiker, rock climber. Let's go for a hike. I'm not going to go for a hike because I live in my mind, you know. And I did when I was a kid too. So that was all imaginary for me anyway. That was all fantasy that I was living in as I was creeping through the forest in my moccasins. And I've created, I'm talking about me, but I've created that same kind of wilderness isolation contemplation experience in a studio here in Romania. And it feels the same because I'm surrounded by books and I'm surrounded by ideas, and I'm sitting in my rocking chair and I'm in a fantasy world. It's the same thing as when I was a kid, except that the birds aren't tweeting. You know what I mean? But so I've kind of married both because I can be completely isolated for days. And sometimes I do. I don't even see Deanna. I just like hide in my studio for days as I'm thinking and rocking and reading and writing and trying to contemplate. But at any moment, I can spill out into the energy of the city, which I love. The coffee clutch, you know, the coffee culture. And there's people walking by and girls in short skirts. And it feels like I'm connected to both. I've got my finger in both pies. I've got the isolation and the contemplative space that I've created in my image. And then I've got the ability to go out and spill into the grand scheme of things and see what's out there. Super interesting. And I would be content. I'm getting old, but I haven't slowed down, and my mind hasn't slowed down, and I'm got all plans. I'm tons of plans. I'm excited, but my wanderlust, my desire to hit the road is the same as yours and wander the earth since I was young is kind of gone from me. I've seen what I need to see. I don't think travel can teach me something that anymore. What I thought to say, and now my whole journey forward is Aristotle's contemplation, the contemplative mood, the contemplative. And I'd be content if I just sat in the studio in the middle of the bustling city, of course, in my isolation. I'd be good. So it's interesting. I've always said, you should change your life should change every decade. Every decade, something should be completely different about you. Have a different phase. My 20s, I was a complete insecure, crying mess. In my 30s, I was like, wait a minute, huh? Really? Started to get some awareness. My 40s, I wrote about it and hit the road, travel. My 50s, I basically sat and looked at it all and go, wait a minute, what about this? What about that? So my 60s, when it comes up, that's going to be a new phase. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm quite done with travel. I'm done with the old style of travel that I did before. I was invited the other day. I met somebody who said, just say the word and we can go and visit the pygmies of Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
And the light bulb switched on.
You're starting to feel it, huh?
Yeah, for sure. And the other side of this is I believe we're living, especially this 2020s with the way the decade kicked off. I feel that in this regard, we're living apocalypse now, where if you want to go and see the pygmies, this might be your last 10, 15 years before wilderness in this way is completely tamed.
So, and the draw would be to reconnect to the civilization history, the historical.
Just see it. One of the deepest stories. They say every story that you ever write or read or watch in a movie is based upon a basic plot, right? Like
yes.
Every story has an archetypal shape. It might be a comedy, it might be a tragedy, voyage and return, all this kind of stuff. We've spoken about this before, but for me, the trope of the journey to the center of the earth is a massive thing. So that's Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, your Sheltering Sky,
Dead Journey Man. To Order to Chaos. Yeah.
So this is an invitation to chaos. I know there's a lot of upheaval, right, in these places, especially in the depths of Indonesia. Pristine jungle is being sold out to palm oil plantations and so on. So, indigenous peoples and people that just live plainly in the jungle, their patch that they can roam is getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they end up on a version of a reservation, basically. So there's a sense of, and this is mournful. I want to make the journey to the center of the earth before I want to, Conrad went into the depths of the Congo River.
Yeah.
And it was virgin darkness. The darkness was absolute. They had this one river in a steamboat and it started losing all of its, the ship was falling apart as it was going upstream, right? It was like anyone who wants to get to the heart of Africa cannot actually do that.
Yeah.
But now I think we've penetrated so far, it's that depth of mystique in adventure is, who knows, who can predict how much longer it's here for. So I want to make
frontier?
A run for it.
You're looking for the next frontier.
Yeah.
And some people think it's space. Some people think it's the depth of the ocean. Uh, but absolutely, there's been a draw to the frontier in the heart of the spirit of man, for sure. So you've got that. And me, I think I've explored. That's
Mm-hmm.
weird to say on an external level. Like the idea of living in a log cabin by a creek again, and you're isolated from miles from anywhere that's remotely called a town or other people. There's something about it that was really, really joyful and poetic, but I did it. I think that's done for me, and I want to create a thinking space and a contemplative space and a playing chess space and a playing music space. You know what I mean? So
So
that's interesting.
would you still say you are a pioneer in that you want to go deeper, even if that depth is your own interior?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
my for certain. Like I really feel like the things I'm writing about right now and trying to explore. You should see can't show you, but my rocking chair, I've got stacks of books on either side that I'm reading all of it at once. I'm consuming it all at once is and Einstein's biography, for instance, right? Um, Ulysses again, the Odyssey. And I got all this stacked around me. The poems of Dylan Thomas. And I'm going on an interior front. My frontier is interior for certain. And maybe it'll just be a bunch of navel gazing and masturbation. I can't say it. Masturbatory ego stroking, but I really feel like I'm on an exploration and I'm on the frontiers. Yeah. And now AI and all this kind of modern stuff, I think we're seeing a paradigm shift or some kind of an eon shift or an ism shift or a era shift in human experience, and we get to see it. We get to look at it as these changes come down the pipe. So I think, like I was a young guy at the beginning of the internet, and you just start. I was an early guy on the internet. I'm a techno guy, right? I love it, and I was like, windsocking to get onto the before browsers. I was, like banging around in bulletin boards and stuff like that. But I didn't have the clarity then to realize what I was witnessing. It just was like the next thing. Computer's the next thing, this is the next thing. But the profundity of that change, that's changed everything, I don't know. I'm in wonder. I have a lot of wonder in my soul and a lot of gratefulness. That's all I know, that I get to see it. I don't have despair like my lovely musician friend at all. And maybe AI wipes out my writing ability because it's better. But at least I got to see it. There's something in me that's pretty interesting. Are you kidding me? That's super interesting. I lived at that time in history.
Maybe you had a past life where you were sinking on the Titanic, being like, "Wow, what a thing I'm witnessing!" It's
Yeah.
like going to the North Atlantic, and the water is ice cold and dark, right? Like, wow, what a thing!
But the thing is that the Titanic, imagine this. The people that went through it think it's just a boat that's in trouble and I got to survive, etc. Right? They never had the concept of the cultural icon it would become. The cultural, right? The greater picture. They never had a clue, and if they did, they might go, "Wow, this is interesting. I'm in the mid. I'm part of this new litmus test that's going to change the consciousness of humanity." They didn't realize it. They were just thinking.
They would have transcended their own death, like they would have been able to open actually to the death and be like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
Imagine,
remembered. People are gonna be able to look up my name on the list of registered
imagine
passengers.
we hear about those musicians that played, nearer my God to thee as the ship was going down. It's a true story, right? These four musicians, whatever, they're playing on their violins because they realized that's it. And they're playing nearer my God to thee. And they went down with the ship. And they were just thinking it's cold. Well, I can't get on that boat. The lifeboats are all used. I guess I'll just play my violin. They never understood the cultural impact it would have on someone like me years and years and years later. but
Mhm.
it, so we don't know either. Imagine maybe something you're about to do in Papua New Guinea is going to have 100 years. People are going to be talking about that moment in time when this guy named Jordan, blah, and you just don't know it. You think you're just going to go over there and try and keep the mosquitoes off you and the black
Yeah.
flies. You just don't know the
Right.
cultural impact of it. So I think that's fascinating.
I got a book over here and I'm looking at it now. It's called Japanese Death Poems.
Yeah.
And the idea is that there is an old Zen Buddhist tradition of when you know that you're going to die. Interestingly, enlightened people always seem to know when they were going to die. They'd be like,
Hmm.
okay, I've got 3 days left. I'm going to finish my final affairs and take myself off to the kind of like a dog. When a dog knows it's going to die, it just walks off into the woods and
Right.
does it when no one's going to discover. And what these monks would do with their last act on earth is write the death poem. So it's like,
Oh,
I'm gone in 10 minutes. So the clarity of death and the heart of an entire life lived now gets distilled into like one stanza. And that's your death poem. And you've only got one shot at a death poem in your life, right? You
well, it's the
can't
same as
repeat this.
the native death songs. The Native Americans, when they were about to
Okay.
die, they would sing
Uh-huh.
their last song. It was made their death song. Yeah.
And was it a song that they had been preparing for, or was it something they would kind of
Yes.
channel from the moment?
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up, but I think it's definitely they had a death song, and they felt robbed if they didn't get to do their song before there was. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. Go ahead.
Why I bring this up is to be able to, obviously, like most people don't want to die and they deny their death. And if you can actually wake up and embrace it and accept it in those last few moments, I think you can take your body into a state of deep acceptance and relaxation. And that's where I think you get like a full rush. I think death is a ecstatic event. They call the orgasm the little death, right? The petit
Yeah.
mort. So I think that the big death is like a mega orgasm. If you open and embrace it and allow it to kind of course through your body. You say DMT and all this kind of stuff is released. So it's like, wow, the passage is ecstatic. But if you're holding on in regret, then you get no ecstasy. It's like if you're halfway through sex and you're holding on like this and you're really
You got to relax, man.
unable to relax. Exactly. Then you're never going to have much of an orgasm. So I think it's a similar thing. But what you're saying about the people on the Titanic is accepting their circumstances so fundamentally and embracing that. Wow, actually, like I was looking at this moment in history. My personal fate is done for. Like, there's no way I, as a living
Yeah.
person, am going to transcend this. But at least I've got a perspective that can open me up to some uh,
Imagine, imagine.
transcendental moment of
Yeah.
passing.
It's and people would listen to this go, well, that's just pure romanticism, and like you be Byron and Shelley and like swoon, you know. It's Kundera, Milan Kundera said it's kitsch, right? Kitsch is like the is art without soul, without the divine spark. It's just like sentimental. And you said you see the children running on the grass, and it brings a tear to your eye.
Yeah.
You see the children running on the grass, and it brings the tear to your eye because you consider it in the concept of humanity and how humanity is all connected together. He said it's the second tier that is kitsch. It's interesting. See me cry. This here's I'm crying, but watch me cry. See how sorrowful I am. I will show this to people. That's that sentimentality. That's kitsch, right? That's funny. Me on the Titanic. Look how noble I am. Look what I'm doing. They didn't think they're noble. They were just like, damn, this sucks. Well, I got a violin. It's incredible. Yeah,
I'm
who knows?
I'm not worried about AI, but I think it's a huge test,
Well, yeah,
particularly
absolutely. We're going
particularly
to
to rise
transform.
as an artist.
Yeah, it's going to transform something. And it's going to be, but like, I mean, everyone was despairing when photography came along and destroyed portraiture. Everybody lost their jobs because I used to paint, Lord Dunsworthy, and he'd stick it up with his hunting dog pictures up in his parlor, and and I lost my job because photography took over and does it in the instant. But something new came of it. I mean, the painters with any kind of creativity, because it's still there, they shifted from that and they said, okay, what can I do with paint? What can I do with art? What can I do with these tinctures and these, you know? And they went abstract. They said, let's try and find the essence of it. And it probably wouldn't have happened or happened in the same way if it wasn't photography coming and destroying realism. So that's a good thing, I think, you know? I mean, like, so what is AI realism, destroying our realism, going to do for our creative juices and our creative art? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've got some keys to this, because certainly what I've come across in my coaching practice over the years and the different understandings of human nature and consciousness kind of reveals where AI sits, because it's a composite of information. So if your job is about mastering information or relaying information or producing information, that's going to be done for. There is going to be space for people to create new information of world events, but you know that will be less and less. And the AI will take care of actually so much of that. But information is really the surface level of consciousness. It's at the very top.
Information is data that is collated, that's gathered. It's just raw data.
Yeah.
And it's shaped in a way we can consume it. So what is information that's shaped into something that we can contemplate? That's art.
Right. Well, my betting is that AI will struggle to do this.
Correct. What information is missing is myth.
Yes.
And narrative. You know, that's what is missing. I really think, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Our whole generation, the last, say, 50 years, yeah, let's say 50 years, has been born and raised, and from schools to businesses to, you know, it has been seeped in the concept of self-help. You know, I've said that, you know, children in the past all had bad childhoods and they went out to sea and said, like, I'm out of here, see ya, and leave the past behind. But we have to navel gaze and resolve our childhood and sit in this therapeutic type of experience all our lives, because you were a victim. And self-help platitudes and self-help thinking permeates all of our books. It's all self-help books right now, as you know, but permeates our businesses, like the way we have our team meetings and this kind of stuff. It's all stuff that we hear and nod our head to. And what's missing from self-help, because it's so focused on the I, as opposed to the I relating to the thou, is it's missing myth and narrative and information. And we're bombarded with information, and we could read another article and we can sit in another team meeting, and that information bombards us, but it's missing the concept of myth. And that's what we're trying to restore.
So I'm going to say something that might not be popular on first glance, and I definitely do not mean this in a kind of elitist way. But as we live lives of information, and also lives of self-help, another word for that is kind of self-optimization, or the kind of cult of productivity that we're in.
Cult of productivity.
People looking to self-optimize, or how do I become more productive? I give myself a pat on the back if I had a productive day. Yes, I've got self-worth because I was productive. No, I wasn't productive today, I'm worthless. You know, my self-concept's in the floor. I think how we are being shaped in these technological times and in this information age is that we get shaped as pieces of technology. And also the limits of our humanity actually is information. So this, right. So there's a couple of ways that this happens, and I mean, I grew up in this. Actually, one of our team of Amorata, he came on a call. He said this very great story of this. He was like talking to a member of his family, and the family member was like, "Oh, I hear an aeroplane." Sounds like it's not very far away. How far away is that aeroplane? You know, that was the conversation. Or I've been to family gatherings where the family hadn't seen each other for a long, long time. This is English culture. I mean, we're every culture is like guilty of this to some degree. But I've been to gatherings where people say, yeah, so how did you get here today, Zam? Oh, I took the M4, but there was an awful holdup on junction 18. Terrible. You wouldn't
Yeah.
believe how bad it was. So I took the slip road off and I went back the A305. Yeah, I think I shaved about 20 minutes off my arrival time. So at this point, you're talking to Google Maps, right? It's not really a human being who has any access. And it's not because this is not a soulless person, but I mean, we come across people who their humanity is actually existing on this level of information, that there's not a deeper sense of self. So I think if you don't have access to other, you're saying that there's a depth of myth, right? There's a depth of dream time, symbolism, soul, myth,
Yes.
legend. Like these are all kind of
Talismans.
left hemisphere aspects of the human psyche, the subconscious, Jung's
Right.
kind of images. If you don't have access to that kind of stuff, like you're not curious about yourself as a being that dreams, or you don't have kind of images or daydreams that sometimes absorb your curiosity, or like feelings.
Yes.
Like you don't have kind of momentary or existential feelings of being a human or a being that's alive in a body and constrained and confined by the limits of like, if you don't rub up against that kind of stuff, and you're worried about the traffic on the A4, or
Yeah.
you know, who tweeted what on Twitter, then that humanity is very, very compressed into just this informational layer.
That's right.
And I think that's all that AI is really doing at this point in time.
Correct.
Like even if it improves substantially, it's still just modeling. Because you know, we all sat there and asked the chat GPT, what's your opinion? No, I'm a language synthesizing model and I don't go there and I don't feel anything and I'm just built for this, right? So they're synthesizing language models. And some human beings do that. And I think if you're an artist and you're just creating like a vibe without injecting that with a deeper sense of your, what did you say before, your intersubjectivity, or the kind of I thou, the sacredness of being, or the sacredness of relating
subject
to
object
another.
Yeah.
If you don't have some of that in your sensitivity when you're creating art, then you will be supplanted by these models. And I've gone on Midjourney a ton, and I want Midjourney to trot me out something genuinely interesting. It just doesn't, you know, like give me some surrealist art, you know, from the depth of your unconscious, and it's just going to merge together some other things. So it's, once you've seen Dali, you know, and his melting clocks, if someone paints a melting wristwatch, it doesn't strike your imagination and make you remember it forever, right? So
that's right.
So Midjourney is just doing that kind of stuff. It's churning out bulk of images which are composites. But I think the opportunity for the artist and for all of us, like if you're a leader or if you're a coach, I actually went on to AI and said, you know, write me some really transformative coaching questions for my clients about this theme. They were really good. You know, they were as wide ranging and comprehensive as anything I could think. Right. So the coaching industry is it can be engulfed by this. But so if you're a coach, it's like, well, what's the store of value which is deeper than what language models can get? And there you're ending up with the hairy mammal stuff, like myth. And these very obscure areas of the psyche. And I would say to Arta, even your musician friend, you know, it's like, okay, if your rational conscious brain has been creating work until now, then you have to go into the symbolic, the alternate ways of knowing, because the human kind of aboriginal worldviews, in a way, like there is a mythopoetic consciousness, mythopoetic cognition is something that cannot be modeled, I don't think.
Right.
Unless they strap on a helmet and they can videotape your dreams for 8 hours a night and then synthesize all the important symbols.
But they still can't connect you to your ancestry and your past and the narrative of civilization. That
we can't even do that, let alone program an AI that can do that, right? Like you have to be a committed kind of mystic or shaman or do some very interesting inner work before you get there. So I I mean, I think, like you say, I'm actually excited because we have to now, you know, the whole thing of the Red Queen. AI is, if you're an informational being and your work is to do with information 8, 10, 12 hours a day, well, that's going to be supplanted. How do you then get an evolutionary one up on this new intelligence?
That's right.
Okay, dig deeper into what is actually human.
Yeah, and I really do think, sorry, you were going to finish.
No,
I really do think
to
that, like I said, this, you take any modern way of thinking and it's all instantaneous now, like information. So we used to read, you know, a novel, for instance, or long form, and now we hold up our phone and it's like this, and we read, like we flash read, chunk, we consume everything, the whole screen consumes into us at once, and we read it instantaneously because it's headlines, and we scroll and we headline, so we consume, flash, consume, and we live our lives the exact same way, from that moment to that moment to that moment to that moment. And our self-help culture has even put this into our psyche as being a good thing, the power of now. Like the past is, you know, is can't hurt you anymore, and the future is an illusion. So all you have is the present moment. And we all nod our heads, and business nod their heads, and everyone's nodding their head on this. But we've stripped out of that then the concept of beauty, which is the concept of narrative, which is the concept of myth and story making and the journey. So I'm living power of now, and I'm consuming flash, 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 flash. Forget the future. I'm trying to return myself to the present, so I don't have anticipation and worry about the future. And I don't. And the past, you know, was abusive or whatever, but it's done now. But we're missing the narrative somehow that wraps around our whole existence and experience and makes us consider and contemplate our role in the cosmos, why we were born, why we're here, why is there something rather than nothing. And science goes, because science only deals with objects. It doesn't deal with subject. Subject means is the I, and what does it mean? And that's consciousness, and you know, et cetera. And science says it's all objects, your mind and your consciousness, your creative spark. You're trying to write an article. Yeah, that's just pure. It's just an object. This is just another thing, just like this, you know, this mouse is, you know.
Yeah, you're just trying to get evolutionary advantage with your article, right?
And that's information. Yes, you're just exactly trying to get laid more.
Yeah.
Subconsciously.
Yeah.
So and that's all information, and we're all born and raised in this information age, and information is good, but information is raw data that's collated in a way that we can consume it. And then, so what is information that's collated in a way that you can contemplate it? I think that's literature. I think that's art. And I really do think that that's the direction we have to go. We've gone away from it. We've gone away from this kind of narrative and myth and story making and stories, right? And we've got to go back to it, synthesizing the greatness of AI and technology and what it's given us, the privileges it's given us, and the idea of colliding with Earth and feeling like you came out of the Earth and you're part of something visceral and primal and real.
So. Yeah. I'm going to try and give an example of that, an experience yesterday. I went on chat and asked, you know, give me a summary of, I wanted the Blinkist kind of in 15 minutes tell me everything I need to know about Homer's Odyssey and Dante's Paradiso. I want to know about the 9 kind of spheres of heaven from Paradiso, right? And I get my answers.
And the hell on the other side.
And yeah, the Inferno and the Purgatory as well, which is on the way. And it gave me the answers, right? And I said, okay, wow, I just synthesized all that kind of world wisdom within a second. I can tick that off information in my mind. But when I sit with a great book, and I pick it up and put it down over the course of 6 weeks, let's say, it's like I've got a summer with Homer. Because you can't read an epic like this. Well, some people do in a few days, right? But typically, if you've got other things going on in your life, you pick up the
Yeah.
book, you put it down, you contemplate it. You're in the shower and your mind just goes off to ancient Greece, or you go downstairs and you cook a fried egg, and you're there again. So it's kind of like this: the narrative seeps into you over the course of 6
Correct.
weeks, and then the narrative is full of its own symbols and devices and intentions from the writer, but they're so old. I mean, it's difficult to interface.
It might not even be Homer that wrote it, so
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. But even like the preface is kind of guiding you into having an experience with the book. But what if I just take it at face value and see what it evokes in me? Because I read
without the summary and without the commentary.
Exactly, because the teacher is then pre-framing my experience.
Right.
Too much. And maybe, I mean, in some readings, I've needed the preface to actually be able to penetrate the text and make sense out of it. But sometimes it's like, oh, actually, I don't want to hear this preface. I want a direct experience with the art. Because when you go into a gallery and you see an enormous painting, usually you don't first go to the description on the wall beside it and read a whole bunch and then take a few paces back and take it. It's like, no, hit me with the thing, and I will trust. Yeah. I will trust actually my symbolic meaning making psyche apparatus to catch things. So I've got a reading.
But then you do read the little card.
Yeah.
After you've absorbed it. Yeah.
Or sometimes not. Or sometimes card
not,
or sometimes this card is just going to try and piddle all over this grand insight I just had. But like I'm making meaning out of these texts, but it's the time investment actually that makes the narrative go in. Because if I just Blinkist a classic novel,
you're reducing it to information.
Yeah, and it's the ride and the time investment that actually unpacks. I think soul is the human soul is this slow unpacking thing that you need to dig for piece by piece by piece. Like every time you read for an hour and then you contemplate for an hour, it's like you scoop another bit of dirt, so you get further and further down into the compost and try and unpack something. But I don't think there's any quick way. No. I never met anyone wise who did it all in a weekend, and that was true wisdom. It's usually 30 years of this kind of dig in to really sink into an elegant.
Yeah, and you just described the difference between information and art. And art invites contemplation, invites a journey. That's why when you read a text, you start here and you go there. You can't consume it all at once like we do with our reading now. Flash read, right? And that's why cinema returns narrative to photography. Because you have to serially consume it. A photograph, you can parallel process it. You can take it all in at once, boom, and then you can look at aspects of it, contemplate it, etc. But you can see it all at once. Where cinema is like a novel, you can't. You have to go through the journey. You have to go through this. You have to put in the time, and it requires your attention. Otherwise, you're not going to get the concept of it.
Yeah,
which is super interesting.
There's a couple of directors I've been thinking about a lot recently, and one is David Lynch. I think a lot of people have come across him, right? With the more recent David Lynch films, it's like Inland Empire or Mulholland Drive. You suffer for an hour. So he's playing tension and release. He takes you into this vortex of darkness, and then boom, you get something sublime. But his movies don't make sense, and he was always panned for making films that they're so abstract they don't make sense, but they do make complete sense if you live in a more surreal symbolic area of the psyche. You get things from them. And so people would interview him and say, you've got to unpack this film and describe what it means. He says, I don't want to. That would be robbing the viewer of the gift that they're actually going to get. And I've been watching this Thai director who I think is actually probably inaccessible for the majority of people, but I finally started getting into him. It's like I could sit outside on my my chair and listen to crickets and frogs for an hour in the evening and just meditate and enjoy the evening noise. So why not enjoy a really slow movie where nothing actually happens, which is basically the same thing. So there's this director from Thailand. Yeah, his name is Apichatpong Weerasethakul, I think. And he's got these films, and he says every movie I make is an hour and a half long, and that's actually correct. It's instinctive, but it's correct because the REM sleep cycle is an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
And what I'm actually doing with my cinema is I'm dreaming dreams into being. So I have a dream, and I put my dream on the screen, and then you actually get to partake in that dream. And I don't even have rational sense of what my dream means. So why should I expect you to have rational sense of what the dream means? But wouldn't it be cool if I could record the deep symbolic knowing of my psyche and have that be known by someone else, right? We're all trying to pass on through our works the sublime, beguiling beauty of the things that we've known. We want to be able to transmit that in a different way. And he works in this dream realm, which I find really interesting. And it's like, well, thanks to you, you just passed me a dream. And I take that in. I've got no idea what to do with it in my mind, but the impressions stay a long time.
It's an experience.
Yeah. And he's got his films are really, really slow, but when a symbol happens, it's like you don't forget it. So I think there's a woman on a lake with a heart on fire, like her heart just catches fire, but she's laying in a lake. So that's impossible, right? But once you've seen it, you can't forget it. It's true art because it's sourced from such a deep. AI is never going to reproduce that, for example, and neither is your average kind of Netflix screenwriter, who I think has an artificial intelligence. So if you read a screenwriting manual, Save the Cat, how to make a film in 15 different steps, that in a way is an artificial intelligence. Because your humanity is actually like squished to the sense of, okay, we need the MacGuffin.
Formula.
We need to, exactly. We need to follow the formula. So you watch these films, they don't actually tell you anything. It makes sense to the rational mind, but that kind of stuff I think is really at risk because Netflix already knows when you're getting distracted. So it can make formulaic things for you to increase your watch time, right? So I think when AI film starts, and there's already people that are playing around with this, you can just type in what you want to have happen, and that will happen, and it will happen in a time scale that
you can write your own movie.
Yeah, make me a film. I want let's see, I want Salma Hayek. I want some Transformers in there.
I want to laugh.
Yeah, I want a red telephone and a nuclear war. And I want the runtime like 1 hour 20, make me laugh. And
so I'm interested in this filmmaker. You have to send me a link to it or post a link
below, sure,
because I'm curious about it. It reminds me of Terrence Malick. Or Tarkovsky.
Well, yeah, Tarkovsky, very much.
Contemplative films,
Yeah.
Wow.
So this gives me enormous faith that the humanity's deep, like what we are at depth, because we are not purveyors of information. A lot of people live lives actually awash in information because we're stuck on the internet all day long, or we didn't have the gift of going deeper within ourselves. We live in a sterile kind of culture where people never speak much of an honest truth or dare to take the conversation somewhere a bit more intimate or daring, right? This beer drinking in the pub. All right, mate, what's the football? And the thing that you've spoken about for years and years, like a man has to go on an adventure, climb a mountain, never tell a soul, because he needs to burn in the feeling of being a displaced and lost human and what that actually means, and gain for himself intimacy with the whole emotional gamut that he is, and then you come back and you can actually create something. So I'm making a massive stand for we need our initiation, our various life initiations, not just to kind of move from boy consciousness to man consciousness, but to actually find out what our humanity is, and then create things and lead people in a way that is worthy, that creates value, that outstrips an algorithm. That's the challenge of the day. I'm really energized actually by this.
Me too. Like, it's taken the information that we're swathed in, that we're bathed in, and reintroducing it into the points into the information talismans and archetypes and rituals and myths and stories and journeys. And like I said, you've got to feel yourself as an experience on this earth. So I have a lot of faith in that too. AI can't take that. And maybe we'll all be living in a solipsistic type of way where we're just a brain in a jar eventually. And or maybe we are now. I don't know. But we're still going to need that subject-object relationship. We need it. We need to relate to others. We need to relate to the earth, like you said, like you could sit and watch the crickets and listen to the crickets, or you could watch this film. You're relating to not an emotional experience. I would call it a transcendental experience, a transcendent experience. It's really something beyond the ken. It's what music does for us. Something beyond information. Because music is information. A sound engineer or scientist can say, well, it's a vibration of this many hertz, and it vibrates on your ear. But at some point, we interpret it, and not science. Science doesn't. We interpret it as music. Music has no definition. It's just, like they said, the physicist would say it's just vibration, and it's exactly this. For instance, when you hear a note on a piano, for instance, you hear it as it's one sound. But if you play two notes at once, we can either say that's two sounds, or it's one, because science would say it's only one vibration hitting your ear. It's really one sound. But we because we're humans and we're and the subject element, we can see it as harmony. It has a harmonic thing. We can hear it, we can separate it out, where science would say it's one sound hitting your ear. That's it. It's just one wave, one sound wave. But we can have it distinct as two, or as one. I hear that, this composition, the symphony, or I hear the single note and this other one that added to it. We can make that distinction. That's what makes us human, and what makes us. That's taking information and informing it into something that science can never address.
What does it form it into?
Well, it forms it into meaning.
Yeah.
It creates meaning, because information has no meaning. It's just information. And so we're putting meaning on it. That's why we will never be devoid of human-based art, human-based music, human-based literature. That's why we have it. That's why I think, in our modern age, we've turned away from the concept of art. Art now is all shocking. I've talked about this before, right? Good or bad, but the whole point is I think that art, in the sense that I'm defining it, and literature is the same thing as ancient myths. What we've always had in our consciousness, which is speaking to the gods, and the gods are speaking to us or affecting us in some way. It's the same thing, and you, because we're human, you can't get away from it.
I think you were almost going to say something a little while ago about the tyranny of the now.
Yeah.
And how this kind of fetishizing of the present moment actually strips us away from meaning and myth. I think. Would you like to unpack that a bit more?
Well, I think I said it. It's the idea that we're consumers. The difference between contemplators and consumers just take the information and consume it, and they flick it to the next thing. What's next? Even our dating is flick. What's next?
You never contemplate the last match you had.
You don't contemplate.
Yeah.
You don't go through a journey. You don't go through a journey of discovery. You just go, let's have sex. Flick.
Yeah.
Right. You go
Who
straight.
Who's that girl that matched with me? What can I find out? Just by looking at the photo and then thinking, sorry,
Yeah. So I really do think that these self-help platitudes, the idea of, the cult of authenticity, for instance, like, let's be authentic. Let's finding ourselves. You just got to want it. You just got to want it, Jordan. You just got to want it. What does it mean? I want it. So all these things that are just inner consciousness, and we all nod our head. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking. And it's done a disservice. And because you look at the level of depression. I mean, imagine this. When I was speaking 20 years ago, the number one genre of books in the world was romance novels. Now it's self-help. Self-help is the number one best-selling whatever, because everyone buys it because it's addictive, because you bought the answer and it's here. And when that euphoria wears off, you didn't actually really read it, because you go to the next one. The next answer is going to solve my existential angst, and you buy that one. And so you flick through all this self-help, and it's overridden our entire consciousness. And with all this incredible self-help that says you can do it, Jordan, you are worthy. Look at the depression we have, and the medication, and the absolute dismal outlook of the young people have. There's no hope in young people, and it's because I think it's because of the self-help. That's what I think. I don't think it's in spite of. I think self-help has done a disservice to humanity. I really do. And general overall, and this is very anathema to say, this is blasphemous to say, general over therapized therapy, for your normal childhood. Yeah, mom had a few drinks and dad spanked you a little too hard, right? But that's a normal childhood that everybody had. Everybody had trauma and dysfunction in their childhood, and they went off through life. They didn't need to resolve their childhood and take all these pills so that they can be productive adults. They were productive adults. They said that, Casanova left. He was kicked out when his mom abandoned him to the theater when he was 8 years old. Tossed him aside and said, I'm going to be this famous actor. See you, kid. And he never had one drop of complaint. Instead, he went into and created a life that he invented for himself. So I think self-help has done a disservice. I really do. But I'm not, I should be clarifying. I should clarify this, because I'm saying therapy, medication, self-help are bad entities. But I really do think that for extreme cases of trauma and real dysfunction, a therapeutic professional, counseling is fantastic, and medication might be absolutely necessary, but we use it as a patch-all for our Weltschmerz and our dismal, oh, life sucks, and I have no motivation, so we medicate. So I need a therapist, and I think that's wrong for general. I think that's wrong. Get out return to art, return to travel, return to literature, return to those contemplative things. That's self-help that we used to have, and we've turned our face from it.
That is the classic self-help, the real. I can certainly agree that one of the issues with self-help actually is I can see it producing a lot of guilt, because if I read all these books,
correct,
and they told me it was quite easy and I just needed to have a lot of will, if I haven't managed to manifest my dreams, then wow, yeah. I'm responsible now.
Yeah.
Before, people would blame society, the
exactly. Now we blame ourselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And now yeah.
Do we really need a book to tell us to lose a few pounds, to stop hanging around negative people? Right? Do we? Right? But we buy them, like we consume them, and we're still overweight.
Yeah.
And we're still not in shape. And then we look at it and say, well, I suck. And so it perpetuates this self-heaping pile of dung onto your own head that it's really me that's the problem. It perpetuates it. That's what self-help does.
Yeah. I'm working at the moment with a number of people with, obviously we're in the later stages of this legacy course, which is a deep existential look at your what ideally is your work and your gift, and the thing that you want to transmit and change culture within the world. And we've gotten to a place in some of the participants of deep difficulty actually to change, because there are moments in your life where you can jack it all in and from one day to the next recreate yourself. You can't kind of reinvent yourself all the time in perpetuity. Sometimes we get stuck in a life circumstance. We have to kind of bake in it for a while. And no
Sure.
matter how many 90-day plans that you make, it's like, no, you cannot speed up your child growing up and leaving the home so that you can have less responsibilities, right? Or like
Right.
your business might be in a situation where you need to knuckle down and
Yeah.
finish the thing that you started. So often we are in circumstances where the easy self-help answer, just make a choice and renounce the thing and then quit, actually is unwise and reactionary. And there is more to be gained from digging into the difficulty and forging character.
Of
And
course.
this
And
like
responsibility. Yeah.
this is a difficult thing even to discern, where it's like, is the thing I'm grinding for of ultimate value and significance, or is that just, should I really jack it in and do something like so wrapping your mind around what one should do is a difficult place to
Yeah.
start, right? So I don't see any self-help that takes in the real complexity of being in the midst of a tricky life circumstance, but
That's true.
real art does, because you read this and it's like, well, there was something in that that sparks some thoughts, and it gives one a sense of consolation. Like, right, I cannot radically change my circumstance for another 3 to 5 years, let's say, but what will be good for me during that time are stories, myths,
Yeah, that's
symbols,
great. This is
images,
great. Yeah.
things that I can use on the way to derive meaning out of this struggle, and then one day be a vaster character at the end of it because of what I've
Yeah.
taken in.
100%. Because
And it,
self-help says you should escape all that now. Where
right,
literature and this kind of thing says, sit in contemplation. Because eventually when your kids grow up or whatever, you'll be able to have a different, phase of life. That's interesting.
literature was possibly, the golden ages of literature were written when people possibly didn't have much of an opportunity to change their lives. So maybe they're talking at deeper kind of existential stucknesses in a way that maybe isn't so relevant anymore. I don't know.
I don't know. Well,
Just playing with that on the
something's
fly.
gone wrong. And the whole thesis that I have is that it's because we've disdained art and we've disdained beauty. We've slapped beauty away. And we have depression, and we're surrounded by self-help, and depression's on the rise, and suicide. How's this possible?
I'll recommend a book at this point. It's not self-help. It's actually brutal. One of the best things that I've read lately is this Psychopolitics by Byung-Chul Han,
Yes,
which
okay.
we spoke about just a little bit. And the idea of that, he's got quite a Marxist background, actually, and he goes into critique, kind of class critique. So you've got, before the bourgeoisie and the capitalists with the means of production, and then you've got all the people at the bottom, the proletariat. And so the kind of capitalist fat cats used to whip us to be more productive in the factory, right? We would go there for 40 hours a week, and if we were motivated more by the stick than by the carrot. Like, if you made mistakes on the production line, or if you didn't keep up with your quota, you would be pulled into the foreman's office and he would give you a right telling off. And if you did it 2 or 3 times, you'd be kicked out of the company, right? And poor again, facing poverty again. How are you going to feed your children? And his observation is that now we have internalized, the technology has advanced to such a point that we are not just workers in somebody else's factory. It's not like the bourgeoisie own the means of production. Everyone can have access to the means of production.
Right.
You just decide if you want to go pro or stay with a basic account, that you can do all the things you want online for free and create a business. And what's happened there is that we're owners of the means of production. We have access to it. We are capitalists. We are business owners. We are entrepreneurs, but we're also our own workforce. And he says we've become entrepreneurs of our own self.
Wow.
And we've become absolute slaves.
Yep, 100%.
And the funny thing is before, you could not have your mind on the job. You'd just be routinely, mechanically doing this assembly thing, waiting for the weekend, and you'd go out and kind of drink the pain away, basically. But your body was the thing that they were paying for. Just do this thing, and the mind could go off and dream of a different future maybe. But now if you are the business owner, the foreman, and the worker, and the the admin staff, you are every single I certainly look at my working
You're
week.
your own
I'm
human
every
resources.
single every single division of the company is like I'm doing. Oh
This guy I
Jesus,
hired
like
sucks.
that's the entire capitalist system in one person. I don't have a lot of mental space actually if I'm really busy, because I'm envisioning, I'm
Yeah,
planning, I'm project managing, I'm producing, I'm
exactly what my musician friend
doing
is complaining
doing the
about. Yeah,
tidying up. Yeah, it's it's
yeah.
it's wild. So that system of being the bourgeoisie and the proletariat is internalized in every individual. And
Wow,
so
what a thought.
this is why we're going for self-help, because we need to optimize ourselves in order to render more productivity out of myself. And
Yeah,
I've been
that's a lot of
thinking for a long
sense.
time. I've had two different traveling lives, right? I had the kind of pre 2009, save up a bunch of money and then just go slumming it and check my emails once a week, make the money last and
Hmm.
have as wild adventures as possible. And then there's kind of post 2009, like after the digital nomad boom, right? Which is, well, I can actually make my money online. So I can go and sit and I can travel and work online at the same time. Great.
Yes, yeah,
Actually, not so great. Not so great at all.
yeah.
Traveling was a lot more fun when there was no computer involved, because you'd have intimate experience with actually real life. But now the computer's involved, it's like, you know, oh wow, I've just arrived in this new country, Bali, Bangkok, Colombia, wherever, these places where people go. Oh, I hope the internet's good here. I wonder if I got that email. Did my thing upload? Shit, I can download YouTube, but I can't upload to YouTube. I'm going to go to this hostel tonight. I better get it out on my phone. So the controlling, managing aspect of the psyche is on 365 days a year.
Yes.
And I think we've been so drawn to productivity self-help because we are entrepreneurs of our own selves, and we've got this emotional animal or this kind of soul inside us. Fuck this, I don't want to do that. I want to have a balance. I want leisure. I want
Yeah.
thou moments of
Yeah.
transcending this thing. And this capitalist superego is trying to render more productivity out of me. And I think we spiritually, we dry ourselves up from the inside like a kind of chemotherapy.
Super
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
I think you're really nailing something, and it's food for thought for me, for sure. It's productivity. This is our watchword of this modern age.
mm-hmm.
And we're self-producing, and we're self-contained, atomized, like I said,
Self-optimization, and the coaches and the speakers that are fetishized are the ones that are like, look how productive I am, self-optimized. And I think what, like, at the bottom of this, we have an attunement, I think, to who people are in the world, and who we are ourselves, and what things are in the world. And I think the amount of time that we spend with technology now, we see everything as technology. We experience everything as technology. When I get a food delivery, which is a few nights a week, I get a food delivery, but it's not from, I don't know, Mohammed or Yusuf or whatever the name of the guy is,
Right.
Made, or who's delivering. It's Uber Eats or it's Gojek. And the guy's got a name, but really I'm looking at his star rating. Oh, he's a 4.9. Great. 4.4. Like,
You
what
don't care
happened
his
there?
name. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the name is gone. The human being is actually a manifestation of this app. And he's either going to fulfill the promise that the app gives me, like brings me my food in 34 minutes. But if he's more than 40 minutes, it's not a problem with the app. He is cocking up. So human error is everything.
That's the
But
same thing as Tinder. You're just looking at the star rating, basically.
right,
The name doesn't
right.
matter.
Yeah. It's, if I go on Tinder, is this person going to do their thing? Like, if I text her, will she get back to me in an hour? And if she doesn't, like, I kind of, the nervous system kind of erupts into anger, because I'm used to technology working. I'm used to a certain bandwidth. And when it doesn't, and I think we
Wow.
look at other people in this kind of way, you didn't respond to me in X
You didn't
amount of time.
fulfill it. Yeah.
This is inefficient. There's a cost now that's happening because you delivered my food 10 minutes later than you promised. I now have lost, productivity of time or something in my day. So I think ultimately the sad thing is we look at each other as pieces of technology that are either fulfilling needs or not. Hey,
That's
you're not fulfilling
interesting.
my needs, Anne, so I'm going to look for, someone who will more efficiently. And then the worst thing is all of the, in all of this is that we see ourselves as pieces of technology as well. We're either optimized or we're suboptimal. We're either rendering productivity, more work per hour or less work per hour. And we're either kind of improving ourselves to crush it, and become more efficient, or, what are you hanging around for?
This is a
You're
really
getting left
nice way of
behind the
thinking
pack.
it. This is a new way of
Yeah.
thinking for me. Yeah, but it's 100% aligned with everything I've been trying to say. But it's well said.
Yeah.
Incredible. Because
So
we're looking at each other, at others, the thou, and looking at us, the subject, as pure technology now. Exaggerating, but yeah, that is interesting. I have to think. I'm quiet because I have to think about this.
in many ways, in many
Yeah.
ways, I know a lot of uh yeah, I mean, I live in Bali, so I've been speaking to a lot of what you would call kind of new age spiritual goddesses, flower child, Shakti, divine feminine women, uh lately. And even there, I feel there's a sense of like, I'm living my best life. I'm focusing on what I want for a change. And I'm going to say yes to things that I like. I'm going to say no to things that I don't like. And there's a sorting for like what experiences are filling my needs. Yes, no, like the
100%.
that thing is filled up. And I think the answer to this, I mean, we've been talking about myth and art through most of this podcast, but the answer to this, which you do so well, obviously the Alabaster Girl, it transcends. Actually, a lot of it is kind of like advice and personal development, but your book transcends that category because there's a poetic attunement in it, which is, you write certain passages which see women in this case, because men, especially in that era and still today, we objectivize women, or we technologize women. Is she going to come around when she says, and if she's not here at 9 o'clock, why aren't you sticking to this agreement? And
Right.
all these kinds of things. But you poeticize women in the minds of men who have forgotten how to poeticize another human being, and instead have resorted to this cultural norm of a kind of technologization or an objectification.
Or
And those,
reduce her to a number. She's a
yeah,
7.
yeah, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
This is super interesting. Yeah.
but those of us who resonate with your book are like, I felt this all my life, especially when I was a child. The wake up call I got from this was, wow, there's someone else who has a poetic attunement to what a woman is. She's lines of poetry. Her spirit evokes some feeling and inspiration and meaning in life again, rather than the fulfillment of my appetite or a mental box that gets checked,
which is the immediate satisfaction.
Yeah.
Which is what something like pornography gives us immediate gratification, as opposed to the uncovering and the anticipation and all the things that had mystique. And it's stripped of, so it's immediate gratification. And like I said, we're judging things on giving us that immediate gratification, the power of now, right? This is now.
Did I get it in the moment or did I not? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the Alabaster Girl could have been written, if it was information only, it could have been a quarter of the size. But to me, the form is the message more than the content. I think that the form and the way the sentences and the words had to have a lilting concept in my mind anyway. I wrote something that I would like to read.
Yeah.
And the book I'm writing now, maybe nobody likes it. Maybe they think, oh, I don't get it or whatever. But if I like it, if it brings a pause of contemplation into my mind when reading it, or if something that third party wrote that I read, if I could view it like that, then I'm okay. And maybe nobody reads it or enjoys it. And obviously I want that to happen. I want people to like it. But if they don't, at least I'm true to what I tried to do, which is to create something that sounds, that feels. The best word is the poetics of it. The poetics of it have to match what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I mean, like the good thing about Memento, which I want to do this book tour with, is I have 9 chapters in the book, The Alabaster Girl, and they created a soundtrack for the book. Imagine that. It's like a soundtrack for a movie, and it's a quieter moment, and it's a more car chase moment, and they created a soundtrack for the book in their own image, how it impressed them, how it felt to them. I mean, Jan, who's from Memento, is the one that did the audiobook, which is out now, but get my audiobook, everybody, of The Alabaster Girl. He's the one that recorded it and edited it and produced it. And so he knows that the text better than I do. He's gone through it more times than I ever have. He's got it burned in his brain. And he's half of the duo, him and Jonathan, that created a soundtrack for the book. And to me, that's that idea of a conceptual way of it feeling, and it impressed me in this way, as opposed to the information that it was inside there. But the feel of the chapter, say The Way of Discovery, chapter 3 or whatever it is, right? How does that feel musically, as opposed to how do we transpose the information in this into, that to me fascinates me. And I had no input on it. I didn't say, okay, hey guys, we need more cowbell and I want a bit more dubstep or techno. It's their thing. It's their interpretation, Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, in your book, you've got this this guy on a train, and we keep going back to him, right? And he kind of unfolds over time.
That's right.
It's very extremely subtle, actually, but his assured sense of self kind of dwindles and comes open over the course of 400 and something pages. Correct. And then you've got these passages which radically poeticize the essence of women in a world like now. And also when he wrote that book, it was like women were probably least in a moment of being radically unpoeticized, let's say like that. The poets saying wonderful things about the feminine spirit had kind of really dried up.
Yeah.
And I think what we've got to do as well, and I know some men are going to really, really struggle with this, but I think we've got to poeticize ourselves.
Correct.
Like we have to fall in love with narrative, like long-term narrative. So the power of now, or the tyranny of the now, but like this overwhelming power of the now is like just be in the now, like open, clear awareness. Well, sure, that's a spiritual insight, but there's the soul insight of you were born into this kind of place in the world. That's unto these your people, and you went through these experiences, and that very long-term narrative of before your birth and then after your death, that I think that's something to contemplate very, very deeply, not just the now, but the very long arc of personal history. If you can conceive 100%. Of time before and after your lifetime, you change perspective. That's what you said earlier on with the people on the Titanic. Oh my God, actually in 100 years, they're going to make a film. I might be portrayed by DiCaprio. Like, you need a long arc of time and a strong sense of narrative to be able to hold a perspective like that.
To be able to see that, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other part is we need to like poeticize ourselves, which is I see myself as a piece of poetry. And I might not ever write myself into poetry or like, show myself in that kind of way, but somewhere in some private conversation, I've got to be able to come home at the end of the night and be like, wow, I've just had 5 days. I wasn't productive in any of them. I've not moved my company forward in any way, shape, or form. I'm a failure of efficiency, but yet my the value of my essence and my humanity is constant and unerring. It doesn't matter if I've been unproductive, because maybe I'm on the cusp of nothing, actually. But the fact that I'm breathing and I'm feeling, and just because I'm a person, as long as I'm not in a tortured hell of my own suffering, I somehow have an effect on other people. I have gifts to give just because I'm here. That's enough. And I think we need to, because self-help and productivity really, I think, is a huge overcompensation scheme radical low self-worth that so many of us have suffered deep under the surface. We think we're worthless if we're not the next.
And if we're not productive, that's, my musician friend, he said, sometimes I struggle with and I just go play Xbox, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what I know about Tolkien and all these writers and John Steinbeck, I'm reading his East of Eden letters right now. He was writing letters as he's writing East of Eden. If he had an Xbox, they would have been playing it. They would have been like, I can't figure this out right now. So,
right.
So screw it. I'm just gonna go play a video game, right? And is that a bad thing? I think that's part of the creative process, that this dumbing down of your psyche, to let that stew and let that cook, because you're stuck, and it's part of it, right? But we blame ourselves and say, I should be more productive and I shouldn't do this. It's a waste of time. And I don't think it's a waste of time. I think that's part of, my musician friend is thinking day and night about his art. And he gets into a place where he's stuck. He'll play some video games to actually, I think that's a necessary thing to hit that side of your psyche. And I've dedicated to my writing. I'm spending as much time as I can daily on a daily basis writing this next book, or I'm writing 2 books basically, fighting for it, and it's hard. But I'll go sit with Deanna and have a glass of wine on the balcony and just visit her and look at the evening stars and stuff like that. And I don't think, okay, well, I really should be, and before I do this relaxation, I should do this, and I should be productive. And I could spend it, and if I spent like 3 days with her, and that's all I did, and then I died, and I didn't get the book done, I think that's a pretty good use of my time and a good and a life well lived. And I'm dedicated to the book. I think about it day and night. I'm driven toward it. The German poet Goethe said, "Do not hurry, do not rest." So I'm not hurrying, because I want to make sure that I maintain those contemplative moments, but I'm also not stopping. I don't stop. I don't rest. And so I think what you said, I'm just re-summarizing what you said in my mind, how it landed with me, is that concept of being productive constantly. Sitting and listening to the crickets is being productive in my mind. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And if that's all that you accomplish from now to your last days, is that a bad thing? You sat and contemplated art. Is that a bad thing? Because you didn't produce? It's interesting to me.
Someone will come along and write your biography and say, Zan just kind of stopped one day and he listened to crickets for 40 years. And in the face of the onslaught of productivity culture, he sat here and didn't do a thing.
Chapter 2, and that's it.
We found it so remarkable. We wanted to relay this in 500
pages. The meaning behind that is this. And like, the reason he did that is because he has this overarching existential understanding of everything. He was enlightened. And so this is why he did it. And we can interpret it as this. It's like people interpreting, John Lennon's lyrics. Oh, it means this. So he writes the walrus. I am the walrus. Bloop, right? And he did it on purpose, because they kept trying to make profound statements out of his lyrics, and they still tried to find meaning in the walrus. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Interesting, man. Wow, this is cool. So the takeaway for me is optimism for the future. Technology is coming down the pipe. Let it come. Yeah. Your concept of poeticizing the feminine, for instance, that I did in the Alabaster, there's no illusion by me that women are these mystical creatures that are above the transcendent spiritual plane of men, and they understand things on a more mystical level than we do. Women are of the earth too, and they're scratching their ass and trying to figure things out, and they're just as lost, and they're just as petty and just as envious and aggressive as anybody else. But it's pointing to the potential of the poetics of it in man and in women. Because guys say, well, women aren't like that. I read your book and women are not like that. I get it. But underneath, the feminine spirit is like that. You better believe it. And the masculine spirit is like that. is a very beautiful thing. So it's returning beauty, the hope of beauty. It's returning the desire for beauty back in relationship, the desire for beauty back in the feminine mystique, the desire for beauty back in our masculine edge and our sexual nature. It's a desire for returning beauty to it. I was on a panel in Florida with a bunch of people, and somebody said, I can't remember the question was, but they asked me a question, and I said, well, the whole idea is that we've got to, we've lost the idea of beauty. We've lost the idea of beauty in the feminine, and we've lost the idea of beauty, the beauty of the masculine spirit, the masculine edge. And everybody on the panel goes, well, no, I don't think men are beautiful. What are you talking about? They completely missed what I'm trying to say. Like, men are not beautiful. They're handsome, but you're missing it. Beauty of the masculine spirit, and I'm like, well, that's not what I'm talking about, a different thing. Anyway. It's a good takeaway and contemplative, food for thought. So maybe our podcast is a bit of a piece of art because it's returning us to contemplation. For me, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I would like what I take away is a sense of, in a way, I cannot fail.
Correct.
And when I say that, I don't mean I'm definitely going to create something great, because it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
I might not create something great. That's very possible, but I definitely cannot fail.
Yeah. 100% exactly right. If I sit in my rocking chair and read books and sit with Deanna on the balcony the rest of my days, that's a success story. That's how I feel. Even though I'm so driven to get this writing out, and I'm desperate for it. There's no discrepancy in my mind.
The other thing I want to finish on, like what I take away afresh, I feel like I have to kind of hammer this message because it's so sorely needed. But we know a lot of men that can really understand the poetry of the feminine spirit. Even though if you look at many women through purely rational eyes, there's kind of the warts and the bruises and all these kind
women
of
are mean
betrayals and hurts and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure. But it's not a huge jump for a lot of us to see the beauty of the feminine spirit, but to understand what is my masculine spirit. First of all, before even thinking there's something beautiful, like what is it? What have I got? Like that is essentially me and might be perceived as beautiful by other men or women. Like just to identify what do you already have before anything else, which is innate to your spirit, which is beautiful. That's something to really dwell in. And then to see that as beautiful as a man, the fact that you are driven, I don't know, to take risks, to do wide things, to get to the bottom of a crazy mystery and blast it open, or to set some unreasonable goal or mission for yourself, or
go to New
just
Guinea.
the way, yeah, exactly. Like run around the jungle, even though it's unproductive, or stare at beautiful things for hours on end.
Yeah.
I saw that. Where did I see that? I don't even know if I spoke about it with you guys, but bears. No, Adelia showed me this. Apparently bears in the woods, they sit like this and they watch sunsets.
I didn't know that.
Right.
I grew up with bears.
They have been caught contemplating beautiful things in nature.
Wow.
For no biological it's not enhancing their survival by any discernible measure. So just the thing about being a man and liking to stop and stare and witness and behold, like even that is a beauty of a man's spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And
seeking energy, a seeker.
You
have beauty.
Our own beauty is actually so much closer than our own nose. It's almost impossible to see until we really have that reflected to us.
Wow. Well, okay, Jordan. I think I'm used up.
All righty. Time for a Friday night over here.
Friday morning over here.
Yeah. Go and listen to some crickets.
Go take a nap. Power nap. Take a power nap every day, guys. Your life will last 20 years longer.
The poets and the artists are actually meeting tonight. They have something once a month here. So I'm going to go along to that and see who's
Is this kind of slam poetry, talk poetry type thing?
It's not slam poetry in the way you'd be like, I don't want to sit through 2 hours. It's a slam poetry. There's a lot more variety and some beautiful things in that. But even if it was slam poetry, who who can be the judge when it's actually humans meeting and trying to share their latest forays and attempts,
I
right?
told Deanna the other day that when these books are done, I'm done. I'm done writing books, and I'll just start writing poetry. I'll just write poetry, and guess what? My poetry is going to rhyme. I want to bring that back into my consciousness. Free verse, yeah, it's going to
Yeah,
rhyme.
right. All these old structures.
Pentameter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Incredible. All right, Jordan.
Alrighty.
Hey,
Hope you enjoyed, everyone listening.
If you guys like this, go take Jordan's programs. Go get my audiobook, buy my book. Let me know what you think of it. What else? That's it, right?
Yeah, we'll put fresh links to everything that's up and coming below. We've got some new things on the calendar, right? Like tour events and
yes,
new things coming that we haven't ever done before. So click the links and check it out, because we've been working feverishly behind the scenes on some new stuff.
This evening of reading and music, we're tentatively calling it the Alabaster Sessions for fun, and see if we get a response. We're going to do it in London, and we're going to do it in Zurich, and then if we get good responses there, then maybe we'll hit the road with it and wander around and go to New Guinea with it. You never know.
Come over,
Yeah. All right, Jordan. Thanks, man.
All righty. See you next time. Cheers, man.